Welcome to episode 1, the pilot episode of Cottrello Talks. Your opportunity to get to know the boys a little bit better. We're going to be doing a topical games podcast here every week, and you'll have to look forward to a bunch of different topics where, like, me and Trevor argue about whether the 64 was better than the GameCube. We'll talk about the best Pokemon starters in the entire franchise. You know, it's topical stuff. You know, there's enough news game podcasts. We run a news game podcast ourselves. And so this is all about chilling out and talking about the things that matter. But you got to get to know us a little bit. And some of the stuff that we get into in our Let's Plays is like what franchises are our favorite, or what games speak to us the most. So we're going to get into that today. I'm Michael, of course, if you don't know my voice. Matthew, what's up?
The ceiling. I don't know.
It's a good one. Trevor's here too.
Yeah.
Say something so people can identify your voice.
Yeah.
It's like something normal.
I mean,
what are you talking about?
That's literally me.
The point of the introduction is that people can't see us. They can't see us talking.
Hey,
so they know.
it's me. It's Trevor, the only one. What are we talking about? Mr. Animated himself. How we doing?
That's what I was looking for. Austin is here as well.
Hello.
And let's get into this. So I sent you guys a little questionnaire. I just want to talk about our favorite game franchises. I will start. You guys follow my flow here. So this was a difficult question for me to answer myself because I like parts of a lot of franchises. Like if you asked me at a certain age of my life, I would have said Pokemon, hands down. If you asked me at a different time, I would have said Earth Special Forces, the Dragon Ball Z Half-Life mod. And likewise, there's been some MMOs like Warcraft and Ragnarok that I've gotten really into, but my favorite game franchise, if I had to pick, it would probably have to be Super Smash Brothers. I first discovered the franchise in like an apartment complex we were living in while our house was being built in Tennessee. I think I faintly feel like, Austin, that you were there.
Yeah,
Austin's,
I do remember that.
Matthew and I's cousin, and we played the 64 one, and the 64 Smash to this day is just such a fun game to turn on. The controls are awful. It's not very responsive. The frame rate's iffy. The balance, it's got a lot of issues, but like there was such a good core of this like fighting King of the Hill style gameplay that I really just grabbed onto, and I never really let go, because it went from there. That was the first Smash game that I played, and I played it after it came out. We go from that to Melee, which I remember looking at the blog that they kept on the website and looking at all the screenshots in the back of the box of the GameCube, which, fun story there. I earned my GameCube by getting straight A's on my report card. My parents gave me money for A's, and then I earned too much money that way. They didn't think I was gonna get straight A's, so that never happened again. But I got a GameCube with Luigi's Mansion and Super Smash Brothers Melee. We still have that copy to this day, and it's the only game that I've really cared to get like competitively good at, to actually like try and enter tournaments in. And so, like, throughout Melee, I mean, and Melee was just such a bop, man. It had like all the best additions to the cast, minus Diddy Kong. Diddy Kong would have made that game perfect. But
It's just so funny because I remember you playing that game and you, it's just not balanced. I was friends with them during that time, so it's just funny, like looking back in hindsight, being so 2020. It's like, oh man, that was my favorite. That was like, I think you did have your best moments in it. It's just funny, like being back in that time, like you were looking so much forward to Brawl, and once Brawl came out, you were like, Melee.
Yeah, well, that's why it's like a tough question for me to answer, because in some senses, like, there's certain entries in the series I don't like a lot. There's certain mechanics that I totally disagree with, certain character additions that kind of sour the pot for me. But like at the end of the day, I keep coming back. And even with like Melee, man, I just remember we used to just, I don't know what we used to do in summer. Like, no one was watching us. No one was feeding. Trevor's mom would like buy a sandwich plate, like a sandwich platter for all of us to just like pick at throughout the day. And we used to just go at it in Melee. And I was learning how to wave dash, how to L cancel while we were doing these free for alls. I was trying to get good with Mewtwo because I'm a masochist. And man, it was just so much fun. I mean, and Melee also had that element of like collecting with the trophies, and I always thought that was so cool that we eventually got Amiibo, and they're kind of like those trophies for Melee. Like Melee came up with that idea, and
well, it's funny because you keep saying a lot of Melee, and that's actually why Smash isn't my favorite. Is I just think it peaked with Melee, and ever since then, it's just gotten progressively worse. Because I still liked Brawl. Well, I wouldn't say that because Smash 4 is the worst out of all of them by far. But I just think Smash as a whole, like, there was always something missing to me from that point on in the game. Like, Brawl, it was the competitive aspect. Smash 4, it was everything because that game had no idea what it wanted to be. And then Ultimate, it's just like, it's a pretty decent competitive game. There's way too many characters that you and I and a lot of people are kind of tired of, the addition of all the anime-style sword fighting characters, which just kind of sullies the game. But then I also think the single-player aspect of that game isn't very strong either, even though Ultimate's probably been the most decent since Melee, but I still even probably like Brawl better than Ultimate just because of Subspace Emissary, and at the time it had an amazing roster. Like, all the additions were pretty good, minus like K-Rool or Ridley, but that's why it's funny you saying that, because if I was just going off of Melee might be my second favorite game of all time behind Donkey Kong Country, but I just think, it rose, like, Melee might be the best sequel of all time to, like, from what it came from, but ever since then, I just think it's kind of, again, like, they're still good games, but it just seems like there's always something missing in each one.
I mean, but to Michael's point, I think what makes, if I were to jump on that bandwagon of like, Smash being a favorite franchise, I could see why, because I think every game, kind of like Pokemon generations, like every game has its own iteration, and it has something that makes it special. Like you just said about Brawl, I forgot about it until right now. Subspace Emissary. If you just had that in Brawl by itself, it made Brawl worth everything. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I think that does make that franchise special, is the fact that everything about it, like, they always have something that they specialize in, and it makes it just stand out, and it makes it like go, like, it makes it something worth going back to. But like, what would you say your favorite?
Well, I was gonna say, I think Michael had more he wanted to say about that, but I was just gonna say really quick. That's the thing about Smash, though, is that. And this is my argument against it, too, being like my favorite, is that there isn't a reason to go back to most of the games. Like, most people, when a new one comes out, it's like the previous ones don't exist. The only one that's withstood that is Melee, but nobody plays Brawl anymore. Nobody plays Smash 4 anymore. Once the sequel comes out, those games die.
Well,
and I think that's telling, too, where, like, you even look at something like Mario Kart. Mario Kart still has fans of just about every iteration. But Smash, it's pretty much like once the new one comes out, the other one becomes obsolete, in a sense.
I would disagree on that note. I think that's true of the competitive scene, specifically because there's like the Melee scene, and then there's the newest Smash game scene. And yeah, Smash 4, there's not much of a reason to go back, unless you want the novelty of playing it on a 3DS and doing that Smash Run mode. But I think there's a reason to go back, like, casually speaking, especially to all of those games. I mean, the combos that you can pull off in the 64 and just those fun polygonal graphics, the like low-res sound effects. Like, the first one just had this awesome style. And then, Melee, of course, is the competitive greatest of all time. Like, the mechanics are just so crisp, so good. Like, I don't know if they'll ever top that again. And that was definitely, like, the peak of the franchise, but I like other stuff with it. Whereas, like, Melee, if it had like Diddy Kong and Pokemon Trainer, like, it'd be like easy, hands down favorite game, like whatever. But I can't really pick a favorite Smash game because Brawl on the other side had, like Trevor said, the Subspace Emissary is just such a special thing. I mean, it was like Avengers Infinity War, like 10 years before that happened with Nintendo characters, and they told an entire story without needing dialogue. The sticker RPG system was awesome, all the secrets that you could find, and then like all the character additions to Brawl and the movesets. Like, I still to this day prefer Diddy Kong, DDD, and Pokemon Trainer's moveset in that game.
Yeah,
they did a better job with their movesets than the revisions that they had took in the next few games. But
yeah, I agree with that, but I just think even if you want to include Smash 64 in there, that people go back to it every once in a while, I think Brawl and Smash 4, it's like pretty much a fact that like once those sequels came out, those games like completely died. And you could say competitively, but I don't know of anybody who wants to play Brawl or Smash 4 casually, because you just have the next game that kind of builds on that newer formula they started going to. And it's just that with more characters, better graphics, and the same stages, but more of them as well. So that's why, just to me, like Ultimate to me is like there's absolutely no reason to play Smash 4 like ever again.
I'd agree with
Smash
that.
4 was the same way with Brawl, unless you're just, you know, you like the novelty of Subspace Emissary, you just want to play through it. I know we've done that every once in a blue moon, but besides that, there's literally no reason to go back to that game.
I need to
Whereas
do that.
like Melee is still, that's why I say Melee is kind of the outlier, where people actually want to go back and play that game despite newer iterations being created. Like I have friends who still all the time are like, yeah, let's play Melee, even though like Ultimate's out. Like we have some mutual friends that have said that. I was actually just at a party a few weeks ago where people wanted to play Melee instead of Ultimate, but that's kind of my argument against that, is I just feel like there's other game series where like each version, it kind of is special in its own right, but I feel like Smash, ever since Melee, it's kind of like not as much that, where like there's a reason to go back to the older versions.
Well, I think, yeah, and I mean that's obviously what they're building, especially from the move from like 4 to Ultimate. Like they just bring every asset over and clean them up and add some more stuff. But I do find Brawl distinct in its content offerings, because even like, you know, classic mode isn't classic mode anymore, and you can still get like a piece of that in Brawl, and then like you have to go
classic mode in Brawl.
I think the target tests are the best in the first two games, and so there's like these little pieces of it. And that's where I actually liked, from the perspective of Smash 4, I clicked way more with the 3DS version, because it was like a novelty to have a portable Smash. We never had that. And the Smash Run mode in it was like this kind of like mix of Subspace Emissary with City Trial from Kirby's Air Ride, where you'd like collect power-ups and you know, increase the stats of your character. And they had all these enemies that you could fight on the map in different events that like, it was pretty cool, and that's the only place where you can get that. But I mean, I would agree with the Wii U version of Smash 4, and why I think, like, you know, there was that whole argument of like, is Smash Ultimate a port? And it's like, it was like at least 40% port, and then they just like built everything on top of that. But yeah, I mean, in the Ultimate I like, because I feel like the controls are starting to catch up with Smash in some ways. The like buffer system and some of the other stuff is really frustrating, but in terms of like how easy it is to grip, I like the little like shortcuts to be able to click 2 buttons and do a quick short hop aerial. Obviously, some of the new characters that they made are just glorious. Like my beautiful crocodilian boy, favorite to play online. I love the Ultimate Editions, and it's just like the game that I always come back to. If I stop playing video games entirely, I feel like I would still come back to Smash and Smash likes. Like, I mean, I just love. I think, you know, part of me really loves fighting games, but what I never clicked with Street Fighter, Soul Calibur, Dragon Ball Z Budokai, Dragon Ball Fighters now, like all that stuff, what never clicked for me is like learning the button combinations, where I tried with Soul Calibur 2, and I was just like, all right, so I need to like press this button combination, then wait for them to fall here, and then I could do this move. And I just never liked the memorization aspect. And I feel like Smash gives you a lot of like room to freestyle what you're doing. And Brawl and Smash 4 really tone that back, which is why, you know, like multiplayer wise, they're not my favorite to go back to. But Melee, and to a certain extent Ultimate, but like mostly Melee, you just have so much expression in how you want to fight and play that game. And I think, I mean, Melee especially is a testament to that, where it's like, it doesn't really even have a whole lot of my favorite Nintendo characters, and the favorite that made it in there, being Bowser, is like really hard to control, and he feels a bit clunky compared to the rest of the cast. But no, I think at the end of the day, it's just like what I keep coming back to. And when I think about every other franchise that I like, it's like I said, it's pretty close. Like, I think the honorable mentions would be, of course, the Donkey Kong franchise, the Pokemon franchise, and like maybe it's pretty scattered from there. Where like I love like certain Zelda games, but I don't really love them all. I love certain Mario games. Like Mario Odyssey is one of my favorite games of all time. Absolute like 10 out of 10. But Smash is the one I just keep coming back to. And
well, you actually just brought up a point of why I kind of also disqualify Smash when I talk about my favorite franchises. Is to me, it's hard to quantify because what you just said right there is probably true for me as well. I've spent more time playing Smash than anything else, and it's not even close. But I think that's because Smash has the ability to just either jump in with your friends or jump in online and play competitive matches. And it's not the same as playing like an adventure game where once you complete it, there's nothing really left to do, or a 2D platformer. Once you've beaten the levels, there's not as many variables, there's things don't change from every time you play. Whereas a game like Smash, or even like Austin likes Fortnite, for example, that's why those games are so appealing to people, is because it's quick and easy to jump into. You can play online with random people or your friends, and it's always going to be different because you're not playing like a pre-made. Like, it's not like a platformer where, like, all the jumps are the same, all the enemy spawns are the same, like, it's I don't know how to explain that, but there's
there's a lot of, like,
so
one thing that, for me, when I was thinking about these, questions, is there's why, the question of, like, what makes a game your favorite game? Because there's a lot of different reasons. That's so subjective of, like, favorite, what you get out of it. And I would agree. I think Smash was definitely on my list. And one of the things for me is like the replayability of it. Like I could come back if you ask me if you could only have one game to play for the rest of your life, I can't talk. I would probably pick Melee, because I'm like, I could get in there and I could play that game like we did. I mean, my best memories of video games, some of the best, if not the best, are when we'd come and visit you guys, and like you said, kind of like the cheese platter thing. Like we would just go into a hole and play Super Smash Bros. Until a week had passed and our parents were like, okay, it's time to leave. Like that was it. We were like, our eyes were bloodshot and just like completely dried out, like an episode of SpongeBob when he goes above water. Like those were some of the best times, but that is just one category of like why it's my favorite. So it's really hard to pin down like what, and I think it says a lot about a person of like why a game is their favorite game. But yeah,
definitely. I just, sorry, I didn't.
You're good.
Or we were talking at the same time. I was just going to say, I just, to me, I have trouble putting those pick up and play games as in the same category as others, which is why it's like always hard to evaluate these things, because it's the same as when we used to play Halo 2 a lot, and I think those games have a different appeal, because I think the appeal of those games is that you can play them over and over and over again and continue to have a good time. Whereas, like Michael brought up Super Mario Odyssey, that's one of my favorite games of all time too, despite not being a huge Super Mario fan. But at the same time, once I've beaten that game beginning to finish, like, it doesn't have the same replayability as a game like Halo or Smash or any of those types of things. So that's why it's hard for me to put those like pick up and play games in the same category as like a game that has a beginning, middle, and end.
Well, that's
it's a completely different experience.
That's a good transition. And what's your favorite franchise?
Well, let me do my little closing thoughts here on Smash. So I definitely see what you're saying, and Smash has that sort of nature to me, but also it's had a beginning and end in terms of Subspace and World of Light. Like World of Light is like the poor man's Subspace Emissary, and I have still 100%ed it twice and loved every moment of it. I like learning all the different characters. I like the RPG elements that they have. I like the maps and the tiny little cutscenes, the boss
funny
battles.
That you like it, because a lot of people hate it, but
yeah, I don't know. I really clicked with it. I like the mix of the Smash mechanics with the with all the RPG elements, and the only thing it was missing was like more like platforming segments. But I realized why they didn't do that, of course, because Subspace Emissary was such a big project that they were originally going to like hire a second development studio just to make that part of the game for Brawl. And like I even love those games, and I've made my own like beginning and end out of it. I recently got every character into Elite Smash, and that was like sort of like a way of me like 100%ing the game, so to speak, where I like have learned every character like well enough to get to that point of the online rankings. And I really like it. Now, if I could like dream up, if I could have my dream game of the franchise, it would be the next Smash game. Really culls the franchise. Byleth, goodbye. Some of the extra Pokemon, get them out of here. You really get the franchise down to the core characters that really matter, and then you add some of those like choice ones that like should have been in the game 3 games ago. You get Dixie Kong in there. You switch out 3 Fire Emblem Sword people for like Hector with the axe. And then you also just like put a really big focus back on that story mode. I think that would just be awesome if they released a patch for Ultimate or like a pass where they did a Subspace Emissary and charged $60 for it. I'd buy it day one.
Oh, yeah, likewise.
Day one. But yeah, so that's what I nailed down as my favorite. Who's up next?
Matt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so Matthew, let's start here. So what's your favorite franchise, and when did you first experience the franchise?
Yeah,
it's funny because if anyone who knows me already or has ever heard me on a video game recording of any sorts, it's like I almost can't contain myself. But it's obviously Donkey Kong, Donkey Kong Country specifically, I guess, but yeah, far and away, man. I mean, it's not even close like what my second would be. I mean, that's why Smash is kind of in that category too, but Smash has turned into this love-hate relationship where there's so much I love about it, but there's so much I absolutely despise about it. Like when Sephiroth and then Pyra and Mythra were characters, and I'm like, I just can't even stomach it anymore. My boy Crash
gave up on Smash.
Yeah, I wanted to start a Smash YouTube channel, and then I kind of just... They took the wind out of my sails. But anyway, Donkey Kong Country, because, Michael and I, that's the first game I remember playing. It might not be the first game we ever touched. I feel like it is. I mean, it's the game I have the most memories of as a kid, like even playing with our father.
I think it's the first one we ever beat.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, it came out in 94, so we were really young
3.
then. Yeah. So I feel like it might have been our first game. And, I remember, like I said, playing with our father, too, like a lot. That game just means so much to me, especially, or the first game in particular, but I just love everything about that franchise. I mean, Donkey Kong's my favorite video game character. Diddy and K. Rool would be up there too as like some of my favorites. But I think the greatest thing about DK, and this is why I'm interested to see, at E3 if this new game gets revealed and it's actually made by Nintendo's internal studio, if they're able to uphold the reputation that Donkey Kong Country has built. Because one thing about those games is that they're all so good. I mean, this is why I saw a debate about this, about Nintendo's franchises, like what's the highest quality franchise? And a lot of people were saying things like Smash, but I'm like, I don't know, man. Smash is one of those franchises where I'm like, I could argue some of the games in the series as a whole are not like great video games. Like I think Smash 4 objectively is actually not a very good game. Like, because I think casually and competitively speaking, it's not good on either front. But Donkey Kong, I'm glad a lot of people brought it up because, like, Donkey Kong, there's no bad games. They're all very good. Like, if you want to throw DK64 in there, fine. I think as a product of its time, and I think that's why it's important to have context when you analyze things, is because at the time, that's what people wanted out of their 3D sandbox games. It was a way of extending the game's life, so to speak, or like its playability, that you have more and more to do with this game, which validates that $50 purchase even more. But if you want to throw DK64 in there, fine. But I think all its mainline core series games are all just phenomenal. Like there's no blemish on that franchise whatsoever to me. So I really can't speak enough about my love for DK. It's even just down to the art style of the original trilogy, the enemies, the music. Like the music, I could write an essay on why it's incredible, and just how that game pioneered that original Donkey Kong Country, how much it pioneered for the game industry in general. Like, speaking of the music, up until that point, I believe most games just had like 16-bit music and a lot of that stuff that wasn't very advanced.
Yeah, the work David Wise did was very groundbreaking.
Yeah, like using ambient noises and music and stuff like that was unheard of. But just the game, the way it looked too, I mean, it was just groundbreaking, and that game kind of revolutionized the industry as we know it. And there's just so much that came together to make that game possible that just I'm always thankful for. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's the biggest thing too, like I said, is that each game is just a banger. And, you can't say the same for a lot of franchises. Like Mario's a perfect example of people are so fond of Super Mario, but like, man, Mario has a lot of stinkers too, I think The Legend of Zelda is another one that's a lot better about it than Mario is, but I can think of a few games that aren't very good games. You can't really say that about DK, though. Aside from, like, if you're talking spin-offs like Donkey Konga,
of course,
like,
yeah.
Stuff like that, Barrel Blast, that's whatever. But as far as its core main series games, they're all some of the best games of all time. And I love how the original trilogy kind of set the standard for what 2D platformers were going to be moving forward. And then the same thing happened with Returns and Tropical Freeze, where I feel like those two games went back and forth with Rayman Legends or Rayman Origins and Rayman Legends, where it was just kind of like seeing who was going to outdo each other, because those games started incorporating a lot of the same stuff, and it almost became like an arms race. I don't know if intentionally, probably not, but yeah, I love everything about DK, and that's why if these rumors are true, about E3 and the team that's developing it is comprised mostly of people who are fans of the original trilogy, and you see in Super Mario Odyssey, New Donk City is literally littered with references from the first three games, like the Animal Buddies names, the Kremlings, all those. Like if they bring all that stuff back, man, I would be the happiest you've ever seen me. Michael's been my brother my whole life. He'll never have seen me that happy.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, and that's when I had my answer. Like when Smash kind of edged out Donkey Kong and Pokemon in my mind. It's not by a very wide margin. Donkey Kong is incredibly special to me as well. Like obviously being one of the first games I ever played. Diddy Kong is like my favorite game character, and just like all the like fun environments, especially I really like the second game where you go through this like wacky carnival and then you're inside of a beehive, you're on a pirate ship and you're doing all these wacky things, and the game has this surreal element where it's realistic and it feels like it has high stakes, but it's also incredibly goofy at the same time. Like K. Rool is a scary character, especially in that second game where he tries to suck you into his blunderbuss. And
or when he carries Donkey Kong away into the what is it called, the Croctor?
Yeah. He's like, he was big enough to like capture Donkey Kong, and that boss battle is intense, man. But at the same time, it's incredibly goofy that this crocodile with a pirate hat and a blunderbuss is like fighting you, and they just had this really amazing blend of slapstick cartoon humor and like a realistic kind of like surreal world to exist in that no game has really done since. And that's my thing with the more recent country games, is that they capture some of that like funny cartoon element. I think of like Donkey Kong punching the moon at the end of Returns being like a really funny thing, and some of the Snowmad characters, but they didn't like blend it with that. And I think partially that's just Nintendo not really like committing to like photorealistic graphics, but those first three were really special and obviously very formative to like how I play games. I mean, the fact that I want to 100% games now mostly stems from like seeing that percentage after beating K. Rool, and it was like, let me get that to 100.
Yeah, I was going to say, I want to touch on something that you said, because that's one funny thing, because there's a newer generation of people that don't realize that Donkey Kong at one point in time was pretty much considered the face of Nintendo, or rivaled that spot with Mario. And it's interesting because there's a lot of people who got upset when Tropical Freeze was coming out because they weren't making another Metroid game. And even now, because when the rumor circulated about the new game that it's the Super Mario Odyssey team, people were like, man, like I'm going to be really upset if they're making a new DK instead of Mario. And even somebody said like the biggest reason is because DK's not nearly as creative. And it honestly always blows my mind when I hear that, because when you play, even just think of the first game, right? You're going through the island, mostly natural environments, but you can see the Kremling's influence on the island, like, which is telling by when you get up to the fifth world, Creme Croc Industries Incorporated, and they're almost it almost represents in what is that, industrialization? Yeah, and them trying to essentially take over the island, and you even see that in some of the levels where you're in the woods, but there are these like civilizations that have been built, and don't even get me started when you talk about like Donkey Kong Country 2, the fact that you go to the enemy's world and there's not really natural environments, like there's swamps and a volcano and stuff like that, but there's like haunted forests, there's like a castle, just things that other games weren't doing. Like I can't think of a Mario game where the whole game is you're in like Bowser's world, and I think that would be really cool, and I don't think games do that enough. So I hate when DK gets knocked for things like creativity, because I feel like there's more creativity in DK's pinky than there is in Mario's entire body, but that's just me personally.
If we're talking side scrollers, you're mostly right.
But,
I mean, there's some really creative Mario titles in the early days, but yes, ever since Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario Land 2, it's like just been like grass world, desert world.
Right. And I was just going to say that my favorite thing about them too is in I like that Retro Studios preserved this, but you notice in Donkey Kong Country, every platform has a purpose. Every platform seems like it's part of the world, like it's connected. It's not just floating there out of nowhere, you know, that doesn't make any sense from a physics perspective. And so that's one of my favorite things about DK, whereas a lot of these other platformers, you just have stuff that's just flying all over the place. And the reason I bring that up is you were talking on that like blend of realism, and I think that's honestly probably my favorite thing about those games is, like you said, there's this goofy, cartoonish aspect to it, but it's blended with this sense of realism and this sense of like even just a lot of the music where in some levels it's almost kind of creepy. When you're in those like mines or those caves and it's kind of spooky, but then you're like, dude, I'm playing a game about anthropomorphic primates.
A gorilla in a tie.
Right. But but it works, like it doesn't feel like I'm playing something goofy and childish. It feels like I'm playing something mature, but is goofy and carefree enough in a sense to be appropriate for people of a younger age. So anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say about that.
All day about Donkey Kong. I feel like that same blend of like cartoony / realism really worked in like New Donk City for Mario Odyssey, and then like the inclusion of like the Tyrannosaurus Rex and some of the more realistic environments. Like it works. It's an interesting thing to experiment with. But anyway, you guys have any experience with Donkey Kong, or are you just like, oh, some games are dumb?
I mean, no, it was actually my
Trevor's experience is funny with it.
I mean, like, well, if we're really being honest, that's my first video game memory. I don't remember much about video games, but I remember as a kid, my first game I ever played at the age of like 3 or 4 was Donkey Kong Country. You know what I'm saying? So
it's probably also the last game you've beaten on your own.
I've beaten other games. I mean, Pokemon, but like, I think so. It's definitely something special to me. Just that game. Diddy Kong was my favorite Kong for a long time. I definitely had Donkey Kong Country. I mean, not Donkey Kong Country, Donkey Kong 64 when that came out. So I was a DK fan. I think my appreciation for it got more. It became more when I became a grown man, right? I for a long time I thought, Kingdom Hearts was my joint. But yeah. To answer your question, yes. I got experiences with Donkey Kong. I much appreciation for it. Much support for it. It's OG, triple OG. And it definitely has an imprint on me in my life as far as me like playing video games. So
yeah, my
what
biggest
about
experience with Donkey Kong to date is probably just being totally murdered by him in Super Smash Bros. By you guys. But no, it's kind of funny. My first experience with Donkey Kong was actually your guys' dad got me and my older brother Nathan our first ever like experience with video games at all, which was pretty crazy and kind of cool now that we're talking on this podcast together was he got us each a Game Boy. Mine came with Kirby and my brother's came with Donkey Kong. And I remember
Donkey Kong Land. It's a good one.
Oh, and it was good, but I remember it's kind of funny because when you're little and there's like 2 of something and like your brother gets one and you get the other, so you just like kind of lean into the one you get and you're like, this is my favorite, that's his thing. And like that was, so I played it, but it wasn't like my thing. So I kind of went down this different route of like, I never really got into the Donkey Kong games. I really enjoy them. They're objectively amazing games. But yeah, probably my biggest experience with it is just, Smash Bros. And losing.
Well, Michael, it's funny because you got him excited for a second talking about Donkey Kong Land because he had this shopping spree recently where he was buying up all the old original Game Boy Donkey Kong lands.
Yeah, because I was an idiot and I sold my games. Never do that. Like, you're going to want them in like 20 years to share them with your kids. It's just such a waste of money because you're going to buy them back for 3 times what you sold them for. And
if you do sell them, let us know. We'll buy them up.
Yeah, I recently rebought Donkey Kong Land 1, 2, and 3, and then I got Donkey Kong Country on the Game Boy Color, which is like... I'm more so just interested in experiencing that. I imagine it's kind of a rough port going from the Super Nintendo to the Game Boy Color, but Donkey Kong's such an interesting, iconic character for Nintendo. I really hope he comes back in a big way with all the workings with the theme park and the other stuff. Anyway, Austin.
Wait, I want to hear what Matthew's
we have to.
Game would be.
Yeah, Matthew, what would your like dream Donkey Kong game be for the franchise?
Well, it would probably be... Well, at this point, it'd probably be a 3D game just because we've only gotten one attempt at that. And, either that or, a 2D style game that's almost like a remaster of the original. Because
That'd be cool too.
I think, Donkey Kong Country Returns, like, I like the fact that it's such a fun game, but it didn't capture the spirit of DK to me. Or, just like I said, like you said too, I think it's way too cartoony, but also just I don't know. I just would like more of that realistic look that they had the original trilogy, more of like the original Animal Buddies, because I think Rambi is the only one they ever used, and he looks incredibly goofy in Returns of Tropical Freeze. But go back to more of that like gritty, realistic art style. Bring back a lot of the old characters like the Kremlings, K. Rool. But I think a 3D game would be great too, because I always think of Super Mario Odyssey and how, with Mario, they always have to come up with some gimmick, to make it fun besides Super Mario 64. Like in Mario Sunshine, it's the Flood. In Galaxy, it's the spinning move. In Odyssey, it's Cappy. But I'm like, with DK, you don't need that. I always think DK could rival... I know this sounds ridiculous, and Trevor's probably going to laugh, but Spider-Man. You know how Spider-Man's just able to, like, web sling all over the city, and that's what people like about that? Imagine a DK game where you can just swing across from vines, you can climb up walls really quickly, you can jump all over the place, kind of jump around like the Hulk. I just think you can do that with DK, and it makes sense. I also think you could easily put Diddy Kong on his back, and now you've got all these crazy movement options with the jetpack, or like team things that you could do, like throwing one Kong into the other. So I think a 3D game that would incorporate elements like that would be like a dream scenario.
Yeah, and I think what you're getting at with the Spider-Man comparison is like the best part of Spider-Man is that, I mean, like as far as like a AAA game, it's like it's great. It's definitely one of the better ones and hits all the spots. But the part that makes Spider-Man really special to me, these recent Insomniac ones anyway, is the movement options and the way that you can like really express yourself and like how you approach a group of enemies or how how do you get from point A to point B. Trevor and I played Miles Morales. That's going to come to the Cottrello Plays channel sometime in the future when I get a chance to edit it. But like you can see in the way that Trevor and I play the games that we just do different stuff. That I'm like optimizing for a little bit of speed. Trevor's adding a little swag onto those spins, doing the tricks, and it's just like. That's also what I love about Sonic and what is really good about Mario Odyssey is that you can be expressive in the way that you move and interact with the world. And yeah, a gorilla's perfect for that. I mean, you just think of like, even like if it was, you think of like Breath of the Wild, the climbing's so cool, but like make that faster. And then Donkey Kong can roll down that hill in a ball and gain some speed.
Well, we talk about the original,
awesome.
The original games. We talk about all the time how kinetic the movement is, and I think they kind of pioneered that whole like just once you get momentum going and you got your roll jumps that really help you do. Like I play Donkey Kong Country now just on like cruise control because I'm just so good at that game now. And there's times where you fly through a level, and I'm like, man, it's just wild how when you really get on a roll and build up momentum, like that game just feels like butter. So I think I always think about, man, there's so much they could do as far as movement options in a 2D game or a 3D game, but just imagine a 3D game just like you were saying, climbing up things, swinging from vines, jumping like the Hulk. I always think about that Hulk jump, that giant jump that like DK could totally do stuff like that, and it would be really cool. So, and then you incorporate like roll jumps and things like that. Like I said, you could put on Diddy Kong if you want him to be able to fly. I always just think there's so much potential there, and you don't have to do what Mario's done, which is think of some you're gonna wear a hat that's alive,
Although Cappy's awesome.
No, he is, but it's just.
But sometimes they miss.
Flood,
the flood is lame.
Yeah,
the flood is lame.
Mario, I am a gimmick.
Austin,
anyway.
What's your favorite game franchise?
Oh man, so this is like up until right now, this very moment, I was still deciding. I'm going to cycle through real quick, kind of my thought process. Of
I was going to say, do you want Trevor to go first if you need to think about it more?
We know what his is.
I've got it.
Trevor will get the finale.
Oh yeah,
It'll make
I've
sense.
got it. I think I've got it now, and it's one of those things I've just realized like it's a kind of always changing, because like I was talking about earlier, is like you have to define what you mean by favorite, because there's a lot of different favorites. And there's a lot of different scenarios of like if somebody's saying if this was the only game you could ever play, or if this was, this or that. So I'll just cycle through kind of my almost honorable mentions and kind of just hit, and this is going to be like rapid fire. So like Pokemon was a game that I love because it goes like everywhere. It was like the game that traveled with me. So it like saw the world with me. And I think one of the biggest things with all of these is like, why is it so meaningful? And it really, I was trying to like break it down into, I literally have a Venn diagram in front of me trying to figure this out. And it's like, there's like the community, the people, and the relationships that you build playing a game. There's a big aspect to video games is fantasy fulfillment, of like putting yourself in the shoes of like, I'm not big into sports games, but man, if you just dream of being in the NFL, then you love Madden, And then there's kind of this third, like more nebulous area of loving video games, which is, you could call it fun, but it's also like the wonder. It's like that element X, like you just don't know what it is about it, but you just get sucked into a game. And I think that's probably one of the most important. They all kind of permeate each other, but Pokemon was one of those ones like it has, all these games have that element of it, but it was the game that traveled with me. But then I moved on, Super Smash Bros. We talked a little bit already, is I think playing with you guys, and it brought me into like a whole nother realm of competitive gaming and all that kind of stuff. Minecraft, I'm a huge Minecraft fan. I've dumped tons of hours into that in college. Halo, playing with friends growing up, and like the experience of getting together and lugging around like 16 Xboxes and connecting them with a bunch of wires and like duct tape. Did the whole system.
Yeah,
link
we had
thing.
a lot of fun with Halo 2 as well.
Then Star Wars games, for like a split second I thought about it, and I was like, no, I just love Star Wars. That's my favorite franchise outside of video games. I was like, there's some good games that I love, but I'm like, I'm just a Star Wars fanboy, so it doesn't really deserve to be in the video game franchise.
Yeah, I will say, there's never any consistency with any show or video game or movie franchise.
It was a movie first,
as far as games go.
It'll always be a movie. It was movies first, and then all the other stuff that came after. And then as far as Nintendo goes, like the Zelda games, I love the Zelda franchise. But honestly, you guys were the ones who got me more into Nintendo, because we went from, I think, our first real console after the Game Boys. Our first console was a PlayStation, and then we hopped around between different ones. We never really had a certain, like, we weren't really hardcore like Nintendo or Sony or Xbox or whatever. But I have to land on, and this might sound lame, but I don't really care, but I think I'll land on the Elder Scrolls game as my favorite franchise. And
no, that's not lame. That's and
it's.
I would say that's
awesome.
a pretty popular pick, to be honest.
I guess it's not lame at all. It's very different than present.
It's a nerd game.
It is very a nerd game. So and like for me, I was kind of thinking about it, and Elder Scrolls. It's not just like it hits at every one of those things, which is funny because it's such a single player game. It's like multiplayer, just the furthest thing from it. And I'm not really a fan of the Elder Scrolls Online. Like I bought it so I could get the special edition figurine when they released a Morrowind edition, and I played it for about an hour and a half, and I was like, the figure is probably cooler than the game. But but no, it was, I was first introduced to it, going and sleeping over at a friend's house. And he had Oblivion, And then I found out about Morrowind on Xbox and started playing that. And for me, like, I grew up in Missouri, like, exploring the woods, and I was outside a ton. And so for me, like, playing, pretend and, like, being, I was hugely affected by Lord of the Rings and impacted by that. So, for me, it was like that perfect, like, I could be in this vast world. And I think that was probably what blew my mind and, like, why it became my favorite is, like, getting into Morrowind, not even Oblivion, but Morrowind on the Xbox. And compared to everything else, it didn't have the best graphics. It was buggy as all get out and, crashing left and right. But man, like, getting in there and, like, seeing how intricate the world was built, and, like, it was the biggest, most comprehensive world I'd ever been in a video game. And it just, like, opened this whole new world for me of just being able to be, like, a different character and be in the game. So then, of course, going into, Oblivion was great. Loved that. Played the heck out of that. And then Skyrim, I remember putting off a couple research papers when it released and going and picking it up at midnight. And me and my roommate in college and about 8 other guys crammed into our dorm room. We took turns. One person would be creating their character while everybody else was trying to write their papers, but also just watching the other person create their character and, like, switching off. And it's funny because as far as, like, the community aspect of it, like, it was a game that we played as a community, and it was almost more special because we weren't all playing. We weren't having our, like, it was such a shared experience between, like, hey, this, all my friends are here and they're, like, cheering me on as we're playing this game and discovering it for the first time. So yeah, I think, overall, I would say the Elder Scrolls, if I had to say, like, what's my favorite franchise, I put a ton of hours into it, with friends, and I've also put a ton of hours into it, over Christmas break, sitting in my room and, emerging, and it's like, oh, it's been, 2 weeks. Holy cow. But, yeah. And then as far as, like, what I would love to see, like, my dream game, that's a really hard one to answer. I don't know. I think, with those games, it kind of gets narrowed into a box of, like, you just have to do, like, bigger, like, it's bigger, better graphics, more options. It gets to a point where, like, it can kind of get, I think I really enjoy the Fallout games as well. And I think with Fallout 4, you start to see, like, hey, do you want to also build bases? And do you want to do tower defense? And also you can explore, and also there's a hardcore mode. And it's like, you just start to have too many options. So I don't really know what my like ideal game would be. I would almost just rather have, like, a remastery of all the previous iterations of the game and put to, like, current console or PC standards and just be like, here's the game. And with the modding community in those games, like, you don't really need a whole lot more from the developer. Like, let us mod it. And some of the mods on, Skyrim have been some of the best parts of Skyrim I've ever played.
Oh, the legendary Thomas the Train Engine.
Oh my gosh! Or I changed my Fosru Da shout to just do it with Shia LaBeouf. So that was incredible.
Yeah, that's an interesting franchise. I think that's probably the most iconic Western RPG. Mm-hmm. And Western RPGs have that more like you create your own person. It's super immersive, whereas like the Japanese role playing side of things will put you in the shoes of a character. Mm-hmm. And I never have gotten into the Western RPGs outside of BioWare's Knights of the Old Republic, which I absolutely loved. I thought that was an awesome game. Skyrim's always been this game I've been really interested in, but I've never played. Matthew, you'll have to fill in my memory on this. Zach's really into Skyrim, one of our mutual friends, and didn't he like create a character who was like collecting spoons or something?
I have no idea.
Sounds about right.
Well, I just used to hear all the craziest stories from the things that that Zach would do, and it was one of those games. Kind of like, it's the same energy that Minecraft has where like you just make your own adventure, but it's got so many different like cubby holes that you could end up in, like where if you want to be, just max out certain skills and be super fast or be great at jumps or anything, like the world is just kind of your oyster, but I've never never jumped into it.
Yeah.
Next release for sure.
Yeah, it has enough guidance to take you along through a story if that's what you want, but it also has like the complete freedom of just open world, do what you want.
Yeah, which is I think is the aspect that has aged the best.
Oh, yeah.
And now every game's trying to. That was really the game that kicked off the whole open world craze.
Oh, yeah.
Now everybody's doing it. But yeah, good choice. Good choice. Trevor.
Yeah.
For the final thing, what is your favorite franchise?
I love how you said final because it definitely ties in. I think that, for me, like DK, very, very revolutionary for me, very like an imprint on my life. My first video game memory is DK, not 64, Donkey Kong Country. I remember seeing my uncle, who I never saw play video games, playing the demo for Final Fantasy VII. The demo for Final Fantasy VII, you were going against the Scorpion boss, and just seeing him do that and like, wow, who is this Scorpion thing? Who's this dude with this big blade? And like, what's going on? Like, I just, even before I knew what that game was, I was drawn to it and I was immersed into it. I didn't start playing it myself until I was, a teenager? It was very interesting. But yeah, the moment I started playing Final Fantasy games, it's like video games made sense for me. Like everything that I wanted in a video game was there. Like that's when I really fell in love with RPGs, I remember my dad has this memory of me like, I saw you play that game for 12 hours. 12! I don't ever want to hear that you can't study. I saw you play a game for 12 hours. Like, he always used that against me.
Spoiler, Trevor never studied.
I mean, yeah. I struggled in school. Oh, y'all dad said the same thing, apparently. Like, if y'all put the same focus you put in video games on school studies, my gosh.
And look at us,
look at us now. Yeah. Cottrello Games, baby. But seriously, like I was just so immersed into it, man. Like, yeah, Michael's cracking up. Hey, listen, man. Hey, follow your dreams, even if it's video games. Who knows? I mean, you can make something out of it. Let us be the testimony for that. But
yeah, man, there's a guy on TikTok who just people on TikTok make money for the silliest things.
I mean, listen,
they just invented a dance or something.
Before we got on here, we were looking at this site where you can make a Pokemon shirt. Like, follow your passion. Whoever is listening, follow your passion, because it may be the thing that changes your life and changes others' lives. But for me, my video game changing life, was Final Fantasy VII. That was my very first one. And it just really made me love Final Fantasy VII. I got Final Fantasy VIII, and some of that started from Kingdom Hearts as well. Kingdom Hearts really lit a match in me. I was wondering, like, what is this trailer with these Final Fantasy characters and these Disney characters? I grew up on Disney. I love Disney. What's this game? And for the longest time, I thought Kingdom Hearts was my favorite franchise, and then I played Kingdom Hearts 2, and then I played Donkey Kong Country, and then I forgot about Kingdom Hearts.
I feel like we had to encapsulate this quick story here. So Kingdom Hearts 1 comes out. Trevor plays it. He does the whole thing. He beats Sephiroth, the whole 9 yards.
That was epic.
And then the second game comes out. You buy it.
Yes.
You don't play it for how many years?
No, I never got the second game. My brother got the second game.
Okay.
You got to remember, so when you ask me my favorite franchise question, honestly, it's a two-sided coin. Yes, at heart and all over is Final Fantasy. If you wanted to ask me which franchise I was most obsessed with, it was Pokemon. For years, I didn't play anything but Pokemon games.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing, seriously. So in that timeline when Kingdom Hearts 2 came out, I was stuck on Pokemon, because you got to think about this. This was around when we started playing Melee and stuff, and then you introduced to me what IVs and EVs were. It was over.
There was this summer where originally we all met in like Tennessee, and we were back there one summer, and we just we were like in hardcore gamer boot camp where we started doing the advanced techniques in Melee and learning the combos and all the stuff there. And then Trevor and I were learning all the deep elements of Pokemon and EV and IV training teams for Diamond and Pearl. And then we were playing Mario Party 4 as well and just screaming at each other. But
oh yeah, that, and I was playing F-Zero. I don't know how I did F-Zero back then. I was doing all the very hard missions on F-Zero. I still to this day don't know how I ever did it, and I will never beat that game. That's where I'm at now.
He came close though. That's what's funny is that Trevor will typically have a lot of goofs in our playthroughs, but he's secretly really amazing at games.
Oh yeah, I have my moments like Mr. L, Luigi, man. Listen. When I'm up, I'm up. I'm the highest jumper, but when I fall, baby, I fall hard. And no, like seriously. So for me, for the longest time, I thought Kingdom Hearts was my favorite, and I'm like, nah, but Pokemon, that's probably my most obsessed franchise ever. Like I probably majored in Pokemon if we really being honest. Like I paid more attention into like coming up with Pokemon parties. I have so many scribbles of paper to this day about like ideal Pokemon parties, like that I wrote in college and everything after that, as far as like thinking about doing the tournament scene and stuff. I put more time and more focus in Pokemon than any other game. Just Diamond and Pearl by itself, I almost have 1,000 hours trying to hatch eggs to try to get a shiny Elekid. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's...
Oh, dude, we could have our own... We should do a podcast eventually on just our dumb Pokemon stories.
Oh, my
there's
gosh.
so many of them. Like when we were getting ready for VGC and we stayed up through the entire night.
That was
and then what happened at that VGC... we got the Mountain Dew Dialga that you were trying to get, the DS.
Oh man, yeah, I have so many Pokemon.
Oh my gosh, yeah. We'll do a Trevor and Michael show about our dumb Pokemon memories at some point
for sure. We can write a book on it.
But so for Final Fantasy, what's your favorite out of all the games?
It's because Integrate is about to come out. Final Fantasy VII Remake, for anybody who's listening, I'm not one of those people who says it lives up to the hype. That is one of the greatest games of all time to me. I love the Final Fantasy VII Remake. I love the Final Fantasy VII. It's one of the greatest remakes of all time. The only thing that's beating that remake wise is Fire Red and Leaf Green and Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Other than those Pokemon games, I would say Final Fantasy VII Remake is exceptional. That sets the bar for how a remake should be done. It should be taken it a step further. It is reimagining a whole story and is expounding it in many other ways that we never thought possible. And it's taking away the whole turn-based fighting aspect and it's making it like that whole Kingdom Hearts kind of kind of fighting or whatever. I just think that they just did it. Like when I turned on that game and when I saw the opening cinematics, and I can't wait to see him again with the power of the DualSense on PlayStation 5 when it comes out. I can't wait to see those cinematics, baby. That thing is awesome possum. It's the bomb.com. It's the real deal Holyfield. You don't understand. You don't understand. Cottrello Talks, baby. So I love that game. But if we're really being honest, I think...
Was that an Evander Holyfield reference?
Yes, sir. But, so it's a toss-up. Final Fantasy VII has my heart, but even though it is probably the most flawed, I have to say Final Fantasy IX is my favorite one, man. I loved that game. And y'all know my stories. They literally have some things that don't work in it to this day. But just the character Zidane was just he stood out. He was just different. This dude with like a monkey tail or whatever. You know what I'm saying? He's a part of like a theater troupe. But you know what I'm saying? Like
I thought the guy with the monkey tail was from outer space.
Man.
From the planet Vegeta.
I mean, really cool. Like Zidane and this guy, he doesn't have this.
Trevor even got this.
Whatever. I get it. No, I'm just not paying attention to it. But no, I love that. I love the character. I like the story. I like the fact that you could play with 4, not 3. 4 characters, the only Final Fantasy game where you can do that.
Well, the old ones let you, but
okay,
you didn't play those ones.
Listen, man, okay. I'm just saying, and one day I will. But from Final Fantasy VII onward, 9, and ever since then, that's the only one where you can play with 4 people, and you can do so many cool things in it. Like with Vivi and Steiner, they had a whole combination kind of thing. You can do like a magical sword kind of thing. Like that game was the truth. The truth. They have some secrets in that game that if you know, and if you don't, too bad. Like I didn't find out until my second time playing it. Hey, the best weapon in the game, you can only get it by beating the game in less than 12 hours. What? So I played through that game 3 times, bro.
That has to be the stupidest thing I've ever heard of in a video.
Well, actually,
it's excellent.
Yeah, from an outsider's perspective who's played a couple Final Fantasy games, they are in fact so dumb. I remember in the 10th game, the way you get a special sword for somebody is there's this one part of the game where, like, Final Fantasy is an RPG game. You never do this like quick reaction based stuff, but there's this field where there's lightning that's striking, and you can press a button to dodge it, and if you dodge it 150 times in a row, you get a special weapon.
Correct.
I'm sorry. No.
Yeah, no.
They even did that in Super Mario RPG where they're like, oh yeah, just jump on this guy's head 150 times in a row. No.
Yeah, no, stuff like that. That's, I mean,
Square Enix made that game, so, you know.
But, well, the funny thing, I mean, but say what you want, man. There is something, you feel like a champion. It's like you 100% a good game. Like, Final Fantasy makes me want to 100% a game. I never do, because there's a level where I just have to get off. But for me, I always get the greatest weapons in the game, and I always get the hidden, like, you know, summons or whatever in the game. I always have to do that. The same thing with Legend of Zelda. Legend of Zelda is probably a runner-up as far as favorite ones, too.
This is, what Trevor's talking about now, though, is in this, we'll have to do double standards in gaming as a show at some point too, because I want to know why. And Trevor's, I'm not even talking about Trevor, but I find it hilarious that people will applaud things like that in RPG games, but they're the same people who will complain that DK64 or Banjo-Tooie has like a ton of collectibles. And I'm like, yeah, imagine if like there was like all these collectibles in DK64, but they were locked behind like doing some ridiculous nonsense, or like getting lucky with something. Like, you remember World of Warcraft, how I got that raptor mound, the really cool one, and how it's like you have to beat this like crazy dungeon, but then there's like a 2% chance that it'll actually drop. And that's the kind of stuff I feel like RPG games do a lot of times, is they lock their collectibles behind these like crazy, ridiculous challenges. A lot of times that you would have, if there wasn't a strategy guide or you didn't have the internet, you would have absolutely no inclination as to what in the world you're actually supposed to do.
Yeah,
I always want to talk about that, like, double standard.
The way they are poised in Final Fantasies, I think if you didn't know, you would just never see those weapons, and you'd be fine. You'd just beat the game, and that's what I did. I found out afterwards when Trevor was doing putting himself through all this stuff. And it's like, you know, I totally enjoyed Super Mario RPG without all the secret stuff, but they pose them as a little more bonuses. But I mean, you're right. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that
I just look at it as, like, to me, you remember how we talked about secrets in games? Like, there's Donkey Kong Country where you have an idea that a secret might be here based on whatever in the level. Like, maybe there's a banana poking out and you're like, oh, well, if I shoot off the ledge here, I'm going to lose, but there's a banana there, so that gives me an idea that there's probably something there. And then there's the Yoshi's Island form of secrets where it's like you happen to walk into this random area and there was an invisible cloud. It's like, DK, good way of doing secrets. Yoshi, bad way of doing secrets. And I think a lot of these RPG games, like Mario RPG is one of them, where, like, not a great way to me of, like, doing secrets where it's just some random, like, you happen to do something ridiculous, or what you do, what 99% of people, how they find out about these things is they just looked it up on the internet, or they had a strategy guide. It's wonder, nobody's truly finding out those things on their own.
I wonder if there's it's probably a discussion for another time, but the difference between a secret in a game and an Easter egg in a game. And it's like, one's like, you should discover this, like, to really, like, complete the game and have the fullest experience. The other one's like, we put it there, and if you find it, it's more of just a cool extra, you know?
Yeah, the stop and swap eggs in Banjo-Kazooie, I mean, that's an Easter egg to me.
I mean, kind of.
Literally.
It's an egg.
I mean, that's kind of, if we're really being honest, with that whole weapon, that best weapon in Final Fantasy IX, that's kind of what it is.
I'd call them Easter eggs.
Because it has a whole, like, inscription when you find it, and it's like, oh man, that's interesting. And so, like what Michael said, if you go through the game never knowing that stuff, it's still fun. But guess what it made me do? It made me play through that game 3 times, and guess what? I don't regret it. I don't. Like, I enjoyed that game. I was able to play with the other characters I wasn't able to play with, and I had such a great and dope time. Like, you know, I loved it. And that's the craziest part about it. Like, it's flawed, and there are literally some moves that you get in that game that don't work to this day. And they just re-released the game on PlayStation 4
to this day.
Like, it doesn't make sense, but at the same time, I love that game. I love it. I never understood why people said Final Fantasy 9 was their favorite one. This game I've never heard of. It's not Leon it's not Squall Leon Hart with a gunblade. It's not Cloud Strife. Who is this game? But like, no, that game was, I love that game, man. Like Final Fantasy 9 and Final Fantasy 7, those are the two that go head for head, but I give Final Fantasy 9 a little pinch.
That one for me feels like a merger between the like more like recent steampunk Final Fantasy that was happening in the PlayStation era and the classic Final Fantasy that was like more medieval, a little more cutesy. I mean, that's where the Black Mage came from. Vivi, that character came from the classic NES games. But yeah, I've always been more of an outside observer for Final Fantasy. It's so hard because I love JRPGs, but you can't commit yourself to more than like 2 of them, or you'll just never have any free time. And so I've mostly become a Fire Emblem guy and a Final Fantasy Tactics guy. I love that.
Oh yeah, he loves
Final Fantasy Tactics.
No, but those games, I get immersed into them, but I also have a stopping point. Like I'm not going to put 200 hours in any game at this point. No game.
Yeah.
Sorry, no, I'm just not doing it. But I do love those games. They're immersive. They really take storytelling to a whole nother level to me. I mean, just the things that they do in the animation. I just, Final Fantasy 7. The reason why they said it was the greatest game of all time is because the places that it took you with the music, with the with the cinematics, with the cinematography, with all of these different things that it had in it, it was just a bomb.com. And you can't take that away from it. And I think that's why it's dope to me. And so to follow up,
it's one of those infinity stones in the gauntlet that was PlayStation coming on the map. It's like it was Crash and Spyro, Final Fantasy, Metal Gear Solid, and Gran Turismo. It's just like it was just that was part of what made PlayStation exist and continue to compete, because it's hard to have a game console.
You say Crash Bandicoot?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was about to
say. I said Crash, Spyro, Final Fantasy, Metal Gear Solid, and Gran Turismo.
No, that game is. I mean, I'm just. Wow, excellence. I mean, as far as things, I would give it 10. I would give it a 10. And when you ask the question, I mean, what would your
dream game in the franchise?
Dream game in that franchise. Honestly, if I had to do one that's Final Fantasy, right? The one problem that I have now with the Final Fantasy 16 is coming out. I want them to do something different now. We've seen Sword Guy how many times? Make the protagonist be a black mage. Make the protagonist be like a beast like Kamari. Make the protagonist be, you know what I'm saying? Like, just different. Dare to be different. Yeah. I think why Zidane and why I did like Final Fantasy 9 is because of the protagonist Zidane. When have we seen somebody like that? This guy with the tail that's from wherever who's an actor pretending but that's really a thief. Like when have we seen somebody even with the thief occupation before? Like they're usually some kind of mercenary or they're like, no, like it was different. Like dare to be different. So I think for me, if they did something just coming at it from a different angle instead of some of the same things we've seen, but that's up-resed and in a different setting, I think that'll be really cool. But if I had to take it honestly outside of that, I would like to see Final Fantasy, I would like to see Square Enix do another Mario game or something, like do a modern day Super Mario RPG or a modern day, imagine, I would love to see a RPG Donkey Kong game. That would be really cool.
Oh my gosh. Don't even get me started on how much potential there is there.
I mean, excellence. So honestly, if you would have asked me, and I know they'd be like, oh, Trevor, he's bandwagon and he caping. But no, really, I'm sorry. I would love to see a Donkey Kong RPG in the hands of Square Enix. Or a Pokemon through the hands of Square Enix that Nintendo does, either Donkey Kong or Pokemon through the hands of Square Enix. Just somebody else. Just give them the reins just once. I think that would be really cool, and I think they'd take it to another level. It wouldn't be a Balan Wonderland.
Yeah, I think the craziest thing with Final Fantasy lately is that this remake came on the map, and it was always our dream game. They had all these teases. I remember in 2006, the PlayStation 3 was coming out, and they tech demoed it with the game we wanted most, and then never released it.
Yeah, greatest troll ever.
And then they even teased that Final Fantasy 7's coming back, and they're like, we got the Steam port on PS4.
That has to be the most disliked video on YouTube, dude.
Yeah, and they finally did it, and it's it's right about everything that I would want from it. And then we heard rumors of Mario 64 and Sunshine and Galaxy being remade. I'm like, oh man, what could it be? Here's a couple ROMs.
No, that's a remake. Usually some people say remake and they use that word loosely. No, like Final Fantasy VII, that's a remake.
Yeah.
It's not a port. That's a
It's
remake.
just I don't know. It's like you said, it's the gold standard for what a remake should be, and like Ocarina of Time got like remade for the 3DS. It looks better.
Yeah, I mean,
they brushed it up, but like
That's a
imagine like a Ocarina of Time remake.
You have to give. You know who started that whole trend, though, man. You got to give the Bandicoot some respect, man. He kind of pioneered the whole like if you're gonna remaster. I mean, because they even call those games just remasters, you know. But to me, they feel and look like totally new games, you know. And Crash Team Racing to me is one of the best remakes, if not the best of all time.
Yeah,
like
but
the fact that they took every course from Crash Nitro Kart, and I think they even took some from Crash Tag Team Racing. They had a DLC. They have like 50-something characters. Like that game.
I would say
incredible.
CTR is a remake. Insane Trilogy is a remaster.
Yeah, that's a fact.
That's where I would draw, like where the Insane Trilogy had all the same like gameplay mechanics. It was everything was mostly visual. CTR blended the really good game mechanics of the first Crash Team Racing with all the stages and stuff of the new ones, and then added levels onto it. But yeah, that's an interesting discussion in itself, and I don't think Nintendo's going to enter that conversation anytime soon. Which is a shame, because an Ocarina of Time remake where they just like streamline it and make it not such a clunky mess, unless you know exactly what you're doing, would be amazing. Because honestly, like, you know, Ocarina of Time is it's got some rough spots, and no one will ever like say that because they played it as a kid and it's perfect. But there's a lot of things that you clean up in that and just like make it more cinematic and visual, and that would be a Breath of the Wild type of success.
Oh yeah,
it'd be better than Breath of the Wild too. But that's a discussion for another time. So this was the first pilot episode of Cottrello Talks. This will be on YouTube and podcast services. Go ahead and leave us a note, any feedback, commentary you have on what we talked about, ideas for topics, whatever. Chat with us. We'll be back next week with another episode of Cottrello Talks with your boys. Bye-bye.